Good evening, folks. Welcome back to my channel again. I'm Jamil Turan, and today I'm going to talk about aromatase inhibitors and how the importance of and about the importance of the estrogen. So let's not waste your precious time and let's begin. Let's talk a bit about aromatase enzyme and its function. Aromatase enzyme is primarily produced by fat cells. And 80%, roughly the 80% of the aromatization happens in peripheral tissues. And remaining 20% is mostly produced intratesticularly in your gonads. And roughly the same thing goes for the postmenopausal women too. In postmenopausal women, most of their estrogen comes from peripheral aromatization. But in premenopausal women, most of the aromatization happens in their ovaries. And the aromatization consists of several steps. And testosterone becomes estradiol by losing CH3, a methyl group, at 19th position and gaining an aromatic A ring and having a second hydroxyl group at 3rd position. As you may know, testosterone has only one hydroxyl group at its 17th position. And by the way, aromatase enzyme is a CYP 450 superfamily member, and it is also known as CYP 19A1. And as you can see, this picture clearly shows the every step that's involved in the aromatization. But in this case, there is testosterone precursor androstenedione, which is testosterone molecule, essentially a testosterone molecule that will become E1 instead of E2 after aromatization, which is a testosterone. And by the way, androstenedione can become testosterone, and it's a prohormone, by the way. And as you can see, I added 3 red circles, and as you can see in the first red circle, the alteration happens in the 19th position, and in the second red circle, you can see that it gains a hydroxyl group and gets rid of the ketone group. And in the third red circle, you can see that it gains that aromatic A ring and it becomes an estrogen in the end. And aromatase enzymes can either be competitive inhibitors or suicide inhibitors. And anastrozole also has a brand name of Aromadex, is a competitive inhibitor. Via reversibly binding to aromatase enzyme, it blocks the peripheral testosterone to estradiol conversion. And by the way, it also blocks the androstenedione to E1 conversion too. And exemestane, which is also known as aromasin, is a suicide inhibitor. Its structure resembles an androgen and acts like a false androgen that binds to the active site of the aromatase enzyme. Also, there are numerous benefits of estrogen. In the early days of the steroid forum culture, like early 2000s, they were pretty much all the guys were blaming the estrogen. And but today we clearly know that there are numerous benefits of estrogen, and the major benefits are clearly neuroprotection and brain protection and joint lubrication. You might have heard, or you might have personally experienced joint dryness by having low estrogen. The muscle protein synthesis and IGF-1, you can crash your You can lower your IGF-1 by crashing your estrogen too, your lipids and cardiovascular, obviously. That's the primary reason why females have lower cardiovascular disease incidence before the menopause. And after menopause, their cardiovascular disease incidence uh, becomes very close to males. And obviously, bone mineral density, the postmenopausal women have lower bone mineral density and osteoporosis and RBC production too, the which is also called hematopoiesis. And what are the harms of the estrogen or the excess estrogen? And here is the thing. There is no exact definition of excess estrogen. Excess for who, right? Excess for what? Only, is it a only lab value that you see, like the upper limit of 50 and you have 55? And is it a physical gynecomastia, which is also uh, confirmed by a lab value? And by the way, keep in mind that one person might have no symptoms while having a 3-digit lab value like 100 estradiol, and some other person might have full-blown gynecomastia by having like 80 reading. And also, by the way, gynecomastia depends on several variables too. Estrogen, those variables are estrogen to androgen ratio, obviously, the gland sensitivity or so-called responsiveness. We know that some women will have, because of their genetics and their estradiol values, some women will have larger uh, larger glands, and some women will have smaller glands, smaller breasts. And also high aromatase enzyme. Maybe some people have high aromatase enzyme overall, genetically, or if they have a disease, or maybe they are just fat, they're just obese, and they tend to aromatize much higher than the average person. That thing indirectly and indirectly depends of high levels of obviously subcutaneous and visceral fat. And water retention, right? Estrogen can cause uh, water retention, and technically it does not, technically almost nothing directly causes a disease. It involves several steps like AT1 receptor 1 stimulation and aldosterone, and that does sodium retention and etc. But the water retention caused by estrogen can be, that thing can be caused by several things, like high aromatization, maybe high aromatization, or maybe a low threshold overall. Person might be very sensitive to estrogen, and uh, unnecessarily high TRT dose can do that too. High testosterone can eventually results in high estrogen. By the way, roughly the rule of thumb for TRT is 1-ish milligram per kilogram dose. Some people might require 1.5 milligram per kilogram, and some people might need less, like 0.9, 0.8 milligram per kilogram. And some people might require dose due to being, some people might require higher doses due to being a fast metabolizer, or androgen resistance, or site absorption issues. And by the way, sodium intake might be a primary reason in water, primary factor in water retention in person. in individuals who have water retention issues, like maybe the 50% or less of their water retention comes from estrogen, maybe, and maybe the 50% or more of their water retention might be coming from their excessive salt, excessive sodium consumption. And obviously, aromatase inhibitors are the last resort. They skew your lipid profile dramatically. They crash your HDL and increase your LDL. And in summary, estrogen is harmful only if someone has side effects, and let it rise if you don't have any side effect. And low estradiol can be a direct result of testosterone deficiency, at least in the beginning. And over time, estradiol levels tend to rise or increase because of the body composition changes. Like, which, as you can see, there is a vicious cycle of testosterone deficiency. The less fat-free mass they have, less muscle they have, which means more body fat they have, and they can produce more estradiol. Like they have low testosterone, and because of the low testosterone, the body fat percentage changes. They lose muscle and they gain a bit fat, and that means more aromatase enzyme and more aromatization, which means higher estrogen, and higher estrogen feeds the feedback loop and tells your body to produce less testosterone. And there are also guys who add primobolan or decadrabolan on top of their TRT. And by the way, most of the guys who love deca on TRT are the ones who have nagging injuries. And primobolan, especially in my from what I've seen and what I've observed, primobolan seems to have a bit of special place in HRT and TRT. And by the way, primobolan cannot be used as a standalone TRT because, one, TRT stands for testosterone replacement therapy, and primobolan is not testosterone. So if you if you use a primobolan monotherapy somehow, or primobolan in adjunction to testosterone, it's not a TRT anymore. It's a HRT by definition. And number two, primobolan cannot convert to estradiol because it's a dihydrotestosterone derivative. And anecdotally, it can be used in adjunction to TRT. And technically, as I've said, it becomes HRT. And mostly, it's preferred by steroid users as a sports HRT, as an off cycle. The definition of sports HRT, it's that sports HRT term made famous by, again, Broderick Chavez, the evil genius guy. And most people tend to take it to extreme and do the 3 milligram per kilogram by default. But he says 2 to 3 milligram per kilogram. And it seems to work in almost every guy as a sports HRT. And they tend to add other compounds like decadraboline, masteron, or primobolan on top of their testosterone to hit the goal of 2 to 3 milligram per kilogram. And some people can, or some people just do straight testosterone injection to hit the 2 to 3 milligram per kilogram goal. And testosterone intolerant individuals tend to use a bit less testosterone and a bit more primobolan and masteron. And replacing, by the way, less than 50 milligrams of testosterone with primobolan can lower estradiol. And personally, I observed that on individuals too. And for example, like having 75 milligrams of testosterone and 25 milligrams of primobolan instead of 100 milligrams straight testosterone. And by the way, if you ask how, you might ask how that thing lowers the estradiol or estrogen, and the answer is one, it lowers the substrate for aromatase. You use less testosterone, and two, it alters the estrogen to androgen ratio, and three, non-aromatase substrate androgen, which is for example a primobolan, can still keep the aromatase enzyme sort of busy and makes the aromatization harder for the testosterone. And it lowers the conversion ratio, sort of conversion of testosterone to E2. And remember, there's a drug called proviron. It's an orally bioavailable DHT derivative, and it lowers the aromatization of testosterone and sometimes used as a substitute for aromatase inhibitors by steroid users. And by the way, it's not an aromatase enzyme, but it lowers the E2 too. And let's talk about the real world application and practical application of estradiol and gynecomastia. If you have high body fat, for example, let's say higher than 20%, lose some body weight and don't overdose testosterone. And you might ask your urologist, endocrinologist, or your TRT doctor if it's a good idea or legal to partially substitute some of your testosterone with primobolan in your HRT regimen. And if you still have estradiol related side effects. And take aromatase inhibitors as a last resort. Chances of needing aromatase inhibitors on TRT is close to zero. It's not exactly zero, but it's really close to zero. And that's pretty much it, guys. Please let me know what you think about. I would like to hear and read your opinions too. And as always, thank you guys for watching. Until next time, take care and have a great day.